If you're in your late 20s and early 30s or mid 30s, what are we doing here? What are we doing? We're not just dating to date. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Trinell, and sometime last year I started a series on my channel called Ttalks. Literally T and the fact that my name starts with T, Talks. It was a series on my channel where I spoke about topics concerning love and dating and relationships and just really gave my honest thoughts. I only posted one video in that series last year, but I want to bring it back starting with this video. So let's talk about something that's been on my mind and heart for some time, and that is divorce. The rise in divorce among social media content creators. I've noticed several YouTubers, Black YouTubers, people that I've been following for years, people who have mentioned their spouse on their platform, sometimes make content with their spouse and children on their platform, post videos recently saying that they got a divorce. Some of those YouTubers, just off the top, are Natural 85. Her divorce happened a few years ago. Someone recently is Chanel Ambrose. Now she went back to her maiden name, but she recently posted that she had a divorce. There's another one that I've been following for years, Anna Uford. I'm using their channel name previously, which was their married name. I've just noticed several YouTubers, Black YouTubers, have been announcing their divorce, and honestly it made me think about marriage and dating and just the mistakes that I know a lot of people make in the dating and pre-marriage, premarital portion of the relationship. It makes me think about the mistakes that we as people, we as women, we as Christian women even at that, make during the premarital relationship stage. Now, just a disclaimer, I'm not saying this is the reasons why these YouTubers are now divorced. I'm not saying that these are the cause of anyone else's divorce. This is just my personal opinion and what I've seen firsthand from couples in my own life that I know personally, and just my analysis and psychology background on some of the things, some of the indicators, the red flags that a lot of people avoid when finding someone or dating someone. So let's talk about it. One of the main mistakes that I see women make nowadays is that they date people out of convenience and familiarity. Let me break it down. Basically what I'm saying is women sometimes marry someone because they've been friends for years. They marry someone because they knew that person for years. That person is familiar. They know them. They're good friends. So it felt right because they supposedly knew this person. The problem is just because someone feels familiar, just because it's convenient to date them, doesn't actually mean that person is your spouse. I studied human development in college, and one of my favorite classes was human bonding. And one of the things that I learned in that class is that scientific research backs up the fact that people tend to mate with people who are in their proximity. So you tend to date or marry people from your work, from your school, from your church, places that you frequent. And one of the things that particular professor always emphasized was this idea of, you know how sometimes people think that like their soulmate is somewhere in, let's say, Australia. These are for people who are not Australian, right? They don't actually live in Australia. They say like, oh, my soulmate is out there, but I haven't found them because they're in Australia. That is not, at least scientifically, true. That's not what evidence suggests. Evidence suggests that your soulmate, and even biblically speaking, this is how I feel, is that God places people who are to be your spouse from those that you encounter in your everyday life. So yeah, maybe there is someone out there in Australia that could be your spouse, but if you're not going to Australia, that person is not going to be your spouse. Does that make sense? Back to the point about convenience and familiarity. That issue is not necessarily that it's not good to find people in your inner circle, but more so the fact that sometimes we are clouded in believing that someone is meant to be with us just because they're familiar, just because they're in our inner circle. That's the problem. There's so much more qualifications that someone is supposed to possess and meet for you to determine whether that person is your spouse or worthy of dating you or marrying you outside of that person knowing you for years. And I think that is where some women, some men even, they fall victim of. Don't just choose someone who's convenient, familiar. Choose someone who's meant for you. Another thing that I've seen that I think is just truly just unfortunate, and it really breaks my heart when I see it, because I see it all the time. Even of marriages that still stay together, I see that it's a problem. And that is when people marry someone or date someone who doesn't share their views. Let me first take a biblical approach at this, because I am a Christian and that's how I first think about things. As a Christian, there is a scripture that says, do not be unequally yoked. And just for anyone who's not familiar with that scripture, or just to break down what that means, is do not be with someone who is a non-believer. So if you're someone who believes in God, don't be with someone who doesn't believe in God. Don't be with someone who is not the same yoked with you. And even more so, if you want to make it practical and not make it bigger than just belief in God or not. It's more than just that. Think about the fact that it's talking about equally yoked. So you can be yoked, right? You can be the same, like similar to someone, but it's important to also be equally yoked on that same similarity, that same value. Let me break it down a little bit further. I believe one of the major problems in dating in today's world is that some of us, we have our own values, which everyone should. If you don't have your own morals and values, please do some self-reflection. This is not to come at anyone. It's just more so of just saying, like, you really should know what you stand for, what you believe in, because that ultimately governs how you live your life, and it should govern how you carry yourself, how you dress, what you eat, who you decide to date, like everything. You should have strong morals and values. I think the problem is that some of us have these morals and values, and when dating, we just throw them out the window. We pretend that they're not as important to us as we thought they were, or we just ignore the fact that we feel differently about a particular value than said person that we're dating. And that is so dangerous, because as I mentioned before, what you believe in governs your life. It governs how you will parent children. It will govern how you keep your home, how you run your home. It governs what jobs that you decide to take or not take. It governs how you live your day-to-day life, what you do throughout the year, what you do for hobbies. Your values speak to a lot of what makes you you. And we do ourselves a disservice by dating someone who doesn't feel similarly about those same values. Let's just give a practical example. If you're someone who loves traveling, like me, I absolutely love travel, it would behoove me to date someone who does not like to travel. Why is that? Well, if that person doesn't like to travel, what's some of the things that could happen? One, they will never travel with you, aka you would always travel by yourself with your girlfriend, or not travel at all because you don't want to travel with those other people. You want to travel with your significant other. It could mean that they do travel with you, but they absolutely hate it. So they're complaining, they're a sourpuss, they're a Debbie Downer throughout the whole trip. They can't wait to go home, and it then affects your travel experience. Or you just decide, you know what, I just don't want to travel, it's not that important for me, and then you just feel sad inside the fact that you're no longer doing something that you used to enjoy. All those situations are completely unfortunate and very sad, and you can put any type of value in that place. I just gave traveling as an example, but just to make the point even more clear, it is not that someone must be equally as passionate about traveling as you, but it should be similar. And even if it's not similar, that particular person should still be interested and open and willing to do whatever it is that you value. That way, maybe they've never gotten to travel, and so they're not really into it. But when you take them on the first trip, they're like, oh my gosh, love this. Definitely would do another trip with you. That is an example of a person that you can work with versus someone who's like, I don't like traveling, never gonna do it, period. I don't care whether you like it or not, it's not my thing. Two different types of people. And I find that a lot of us in dating, we date people who have adamantly or explicitly, clearly mentioned that they don't hold the same values as us. And we pretend or we ignore that, but it's too big of a deal. Another example, if you want kids and you're passionate about family, you really care about your parents, really want children, lots of children, you date someone who treats their mom like trash, someone who's not big on family gatherings, someone who doesn't want kids, what's gonna happen? Are you just not gonna have kids because that's not what he wants? Are you going to be okay with not being cool with his family because he's not cool with his family? Are you going to be okay with him not being cool with your family because he doesn't really care about family? Like, what are we saying here? We really have to think about, like, what are our values and whether it makes sense for you to deal with this, which it never does. In no scenario does it benefit you for you to do this, because there are people out there that share your same values. There are people out there who feel passionately the same level of passion or a similar level of passion about the same things you're passionate about. Why settle for someone who doesn't? Don't let me get started about faith and finding someone who believes in God and isn't in the same denomination as you and feels as equally passionate about you as you are of God. Huge thing that a lot of people make the mistake of getting with people who don't share this same level of faith, and it is just so sad to me whenever I see it, because of how much the belief in God and faith governs one's life, governs marriage. It's the foundation of a relationship. And if you don't believe that, then what's our foundation? You know, what happens for our children? Is it your intention for them to be raised up and to believe in God and to be raised in a Christian church? Is it not? Are you okay with this lifestyle of your husband staying at home while you and your kids go to church? We got to ask ourselves these questions, whether it's faith or traveling or any type of value, whether or not you want to live this life where one or both of you are feeling resentful, one or both of you are compromising your values. Short answer is no. Don't do it, sis. And ultimately, it will lead to strife or divorce. That's the truth. Another thing that I see as like such a unfortunate mistake that some of us make in dating is rushing into things. Actually, before I even talk about rushing into things, what I want to say first, even apart from that, is when we choose people just because they're a nice person. I cannot tell you how many times my girlfriends would tell me that they want to date a particular guy because they're a nice person, because they're kind to them, because they've done something sweet to them. And one of the things, as a running joke between me and my husband, we always tell each other, like, anybody can be a nice person. In fact, there's lots of nice people in this world. Doesn't mean that that particular nice person is for you. Y'all following me? It's just like, in order to be your spouse, not just a spouse, not just a husband, not just a wife. If you're looking for the spouse for you, your husband, your wife, you have to consider way more things than just whether or not this person is a nice person. Because truth is, there are lots of nice people. You gotta find someone who shares the same values as I mentioned. You gotta find someone who really has their heart set to marry you, to get married, period. Because a lot of people, that is not their intention. They get married, but that wasn't their intention. Some people are dragged down the altar, and that's because maybe the woman wants to get married and they don't, but after years and pressure from outside people or their girlfriend, they end up doing it. Like, don't let that be you. What I've realized in dating, especially as a Christian woman and just seeing my other Christian girls out here in the dating world still, is that, like, sometimes it's difficult to wait on God to bring you your spouse. I will not pretend that it's not. As someone who got married at 27, which I don't know if you can say is early or late depending on who you are, I personally believe that I wasn't single for that long, I wasn't waiting a long time. However, sometimes you do wait, and I think that your wait shouldn't cause you to choose someone just because. I've waited too long, so I'm gonna pick up anybody. Don't do that. Don't harm yourself. Enjoy your singleness. This is probably the only time you'll get to be single. Because once you're married, you're married. It's it for life. You're locked in. Ain't no switching up. That's how it should be. For a lot of people, it's not like that. This whole video is about the rise of YouTuber divorce. But I firmly believe you shouldn't let your circumstances rush you into choosing someone just to choose someone, just to not be single. It is so important to you to be comfortable in your own self, to learn and know for sure what your values are, know what you stand for, know what you want out of a spouse prior to going out into the dating world, so you know what guidelines to sort of evaluate people on. If you want to be married, talk about marriage first in the first few dates. I know that's like taboo and some people might disagree with me on that one, but I'm someone who likes to make it real clear, especially if you're in your late 20s and early 30s or mid 30s. What are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? We're not just dating to date. Are you trying to find a wife or not? You don't ask it like that. But that's kind of the attitude you should go into things with, because you don't have time to play. You don't have time to waste. So you need to make it clear that's your intention, and if it's not their intention, he ain't the one. No confusion. So that's all I wanted to say about this topic for tonight. I do want to make more videos like this. Feel free to let me know down below any like topics or questions that I can answer. I like this style of video because I can just chat with you guys. You guys don't have to agree with what I have to say, but if you do agree, let me know. If you don't agree, comment that below as well, and I will see you in my next tea talk video.